Hey, I'm Robin, and welcome to the Radical Review Show on the Lazor Flashback channel. I consider myself an above-average Zelda fan. Granted, I haven't played Skyward Sword or A Link Between Worlds yet. I know. That's not to say that I don't own them, though. Actually, I have 2 copies of Skyward Sword. Sadly, I just never felt the urge to delve into it. A Link Between Worlds, on the other hand, is a game that I'm really looking forward to trying. But there's a reason for my fascination with this franchise, and it started back in the 90s. I was probably about 5 or 6 years old, and for whatever reason, my neighbor gave me and my brother a golden cartridge, which was The Legend of Zelda for the NES. I remember being so excited back then, eager to see what this game was all about, and that's the day that shaped my imagination in so many ways. Since then, I've always had a fascination with the Zelda games. I can even sort of replicate some of the same feelings I had playing this back in the day. The mesmerizing menu screen, the mysterious dungeons and caves, and the great accomplishment of saving up for all those different stuff to buy from the shops. And let's not forget the spinning top hats in the desert. Yeah, I know they're not really top hats, but let's face it, that's more or less exactly what they look like. But the game that I'm talking about today is not a Zelda game, and it's not one of my childhood memories either. But it's a game that follows many of the classic Zelda guidelines. It's an action-adventure game with a few RPG elements, and it's known only as the Story of Thor. Or Beyond Oasis if you're from the US. I'll be referring to it as the former though, since that's the release that I have. The story goes as following. You are Prince Ali of Oasis who stumbles across a golden armlet on his latest travels. The armlet was once worn by a powerful sorcerer named Rihal, who used it to protect the spirits. I'll get to those later. Of course, there has to be a bad guy here, as every good story starts with a tragedy, right? No? Whatever. Anyways, there was another armlet worn by a sorcerer by the name Agito or Agito. I don't know. A silver armlet which he used to cause chaos and destruction. Yeah, that's right, this guy doesn't even have a goal that serves him, he's just after chaos and destruction. Years ago, they both died in a devastating battle and the armlet was considered to be forever lost. In bringing the golden armlet back to Oasis, an evil army of, well, basically anything and everything, ranging from snakes, bats, fuck it, even flies, all the way to mutated rats and giant troll-looking dudes, starts attacking the city in search for the armlets. You know, reading omelet on the paper, yeah, that's one thing, that's fine, but when I'm saying it out loud, it kind of sounds like I'm saying omelet. Yeah. The presentation is great, and the, should I say, slightly animated cutscenes actually look really good. I kinda like the story too, as it strays from the usual kill the bad guy and save the princess stuff. Don't get me wrong though, the story, as often with these retro games, is not the most important part of the experience, but it's worth mentioning that it's actually pretty good. You return to Oasis with the armlet and the game begins. If you like, you can talk to all the villagers and see what they have to say, but it's mostly useless small talk and ass-kissing. You are the prince after all, what did you expect? Can't behave like a fucking human being around members of the royal family! It's just like in real life! It's so real! The graphics in the game is what first got me interested in playing it. I absolutely love the art style and animations. The environments and characters are very well drawn, to say the least. Even though the Sega is known for some pretty colorful graphics, in my opinion, the Story of Thor is one that stands out as one of the best looking titles on the system. So without any further ado, let's take a look at how this game is played. There's a medium-sized overworld where you can free roam for most of the game. To proceed in the story, you need to find dungeons systematically. Each dungeon gets procedurally more difficult and consists of the same basic formula. Kill monsters! Solve puzzles! And defeat the boss! After beating certain dungeons, you will receive a spirit which you can summon at any nearby source they can be summoned from. Ditto, the water spirit, can be summoned from water. Efret, the fire spirit, can be summoned from fire. Shade, the shadow spirit, can be summoned from your own reflection. And Bow, or Bow, the plant spirit, can be summoned from these Venus flytrap looking plants, which have been placed scarcely throughout the map. These spirits help you in multiple ways. They're needed for different puzzles, they can engage in combat, use special abilities, and even heal you. These are awesome, and definitely one of the most interesting parts of the experience. You'll also come across these, Pokemon badge-looking gems, which you can collect to make your spirit stronger. Sometimes you'll run across them completely random, but others are hidden behind some puzzles and challenges that you'll have to figure out yourself. Some of them are even more like minigames, really. Like this waterfall thing where you have to follow the stream to pick up the gems and items on the way down. Just, learn from my mistakes and, keep walking upwards as you reach the bottom, or you'll fall off the map and into a totally different area, which means you'll have to do quite a bit of backtracking to get back to the cave. As long as you remember that though, you can go down the stream as many times as you like until you've collected all those precious items. Except for you, Cabbage. You're not even worth it. Now that that's taken care of, let's take a look at some of the gameplay.
Shut up!
This right here is the pause menu. On top, there are two inventories. The first one is where all the extra weapons that you pick up will be placed. There's a decent variation of these weapons to find throughout the game, but they all have limited use. Below is the second inventory, which you can fill up with health and mana items. It's all very basic, but I love the fact that this game even have an inventory system. Then there's the status screen, which shows your level or rank, health, mana, total kills, and the spirit gems, and even other artifacts that increases your own stats. Next up is the map, which is very primitive, but at least it shows the way that you're supposed to go by having a waypoint pinned to your current objective. Lastly, there's a save option, which I have to give them credit for. I know this seems like a pretty standard feature to have, but it really wasn't back then. And this game desperately needs it, as it actually takes a few hours to complete. It personally took me 6 hours and 30 minutes to complete it, but I did take my time in certain places, and I'm sure if you just go for the main story, you could do it in less than 4 or 5 hours. You know, I still think that's pretty good for a game from this era. Again, I'm talking about you who are new to this game, as I've seen experienced players breeze through this in well under 2 hours. The Story of Thor doesn't only have its very awesome saving system, it also auto-saves your progress so you don't have to start off from your last save, but instead from places such as the beginning of a dungeon. The combat is simple but effective. It's actually really satisfying to beat down enemies, and there's multiple attacks to choose from. You get all these cool moves like spin attack, jump attack, straight forward run attack, and holy shit, backflip attack! Okay, so I got a little bit overexcited there, but the attacks are actually pretty cool. Wielding a sword causes more damage, obviously, but the backflip and spinning attack cannot be used while doing this. The crossbow causes a decent amount of damage, as you would expect, and is great if you're low on health and need to keep some distance. The bombs have a shorter distance, but causes a fair deal more damage. They can also easily be used to light bonfires and torches instead of using effort, which can be a hassle at times. Keep in mind though that there are several varieties of these weapons with different stats. I'm just talking relatively.
Look at these assholes! Jumping down here like they're all that. Actually, I wonder if I can do that too. Hey, I can! Sweet! You know, jumping down levels actually make the map so much more accessible. It's cool.
I love that they actually took the time to add this to the game. It's really not something you see very often. Another thing that I love about this game is that objects of damage actually cause damage, not just to you, but to all the enemies alike. Bombs can be deflected back to soldiers, which will kill them instantly, and fire traps will work on anyone walking into them. It's a small detail, but creates a rather large impact on the gameplay. It is so satisfying to lure enemies into a trap like this, you have no idea. Okay, so I just beat the first dungeon, so this must be the second one. Looks like the evil Mr. Evil Guy pulled out his most vicious band of henchmen to greet me. Oh, and of course the fish can't even hurt me. Then why even have them there in the first place? I mean, what the hell, is he dying? Oh my god, that's amazing. He died and turned into, well, a fish, but in form of a health item. I was not expecting that at all. That's awesome. You see, there's fish jumping around in the water all over the map, and you can actually get in there and attack them, which might give you some random loot. Or you can lure them onto land and watch them slowly and painfully dry out, which, like before, gives you a health item. There's a lot of different enemies in the game with a wide variety of attacks. And then there's this. Ugh, what the hell, game? You know, I'm not sure what this is supposed to be, but I could definitely tell you what it looks like. But I think I'm just gonna leave it up to your imagination for now. So I guess it's time to say a few words about the boss fights. I'm always a little skeptical to these, as I often find them long and boring. Now don't get me wrong, I like a good challenge every now and again, but if the attacks and puzzles are uninspired or too fucking vague to the point where I feel like punching myself in the face with razors glued to my fist, then I'd rather be playing something worthwhile. That's not the case here though. The boss fights aren't the most original I've seen, but it really doesn't matter as they're fun and challenging enough to give you a hard time if you stumble across them with only a few health items.
Okay, so now that I'm done praising this game beyond fucking belief, it's time to get dirty. Every game has its flaws, you know, and, well, this one is no exception.
First off, I need to address the music here. None of the tracks are especially intriguing, and I'd go as far as to say as some of the tracks are downright horrible. Oh, seriously, listen, what is this? I'm sure a lot of people will disagree with me on this, but you know, music is supposed to make you feel, and that's simply not the case when I'm listening to this. And it's such a shame too, because with some awesome music, this game would have been so much more. To be fair though, there are a couple tracks there that aren't that bad. Like the ending title. Sure, it's simple, but it's beautiful. I really wish the game had more piano music like this. With that said, the composer Yuzo Koshiro is the same guy who worked on the music for such franchises as Sonic, Streets of Rage, and Shenmue, which are all blessed with undeniably great pieces, so I'm not saying that he's not a talented composer. But I guess I'm gonna have to be the asshole to point out that this just isn't his best work of art. It just fails to impress on too many levels. On a side note, here's a fun fact for you. Yuzo Koshiro's mother Tomo is the founder of Ancient. You know, the developers of this game. His sister Ayano also works at the company as an art designer. I'm telling you, that's one hell of a talented family. I wonder what the father does. Yuzu is currently managing the company, which sadly hasn't released anything memorable since the release of the Story of Thor. But at least they're still alive, which is impressive in itself. But back to the matter at hand. Another unconventional feature is that the game has its fair share of platforming parts. Now, I'm not saying that platforming itself is a bad thing, but they really don't work that well in this case. Usually, platformers are synonymous with 2D side-scrollers, with a few exceptions of course. I'm talking before 3D came along, obviously. And there's a reason for that, and it comes down to the perspective. When you're seeing your character from a side view like in Mario, it's easy to make a somewhat accurate guess as to where your character is gonna land. But from a tilted top-down view like we have here, it's a lot harder to estimate. At least when you're dealing with moving platforms and the shadow beneath you disappear into the gaps. You'll get somewhat used to it after attempting them for a while, but it's just not good. If you sprint and jump onto a platform which would be otherwise out of reach, you will slide right off that pitch and fall into the depths of hell! I cannot for the life of me enjoy these parts, and every time I see them, I'm like,
more platforms!
It's hard to explain, it's one of those things that you just have to experience for yourself. Here's something you can do if you want to go hardcore, but it's gonna take a silly fucking amount of time, and you'll probably walk out empty-handed. This dungeon right here consists of 100 rooms. I kid you not. 100 rooms of random enemies. This could have been an awesome challenge had it not been for this one little issue. While you're in here, the game will not allow you to use any potions or any items at all, really. At least they had the decency to make it so you restore some HP after every 10 rooms. But it's like 10 to 15%, so it's not like it's gonna matter anyway. It's like trying to eat a whole cake as fast as you can with one fork, and then someone comes up to you with another fork and says, "Here, try eating it with 2 forks. It doesn't matter how many forks you have, your mouth only has room for so much food at once! The furthest I got was to room 40. Now if you somehow manage to get through this, you will be awarded with an infinite Omega Fire Sword, and it looks pretty badass. I probably spent like 20 to 30 minutes on this before I figured, fuck it, it is not worth it.
Lastly, I want to talk about the ending, so consider this your spoiler alert. And if you want to skip the spoilers, you can just click the button right here. And it's gone! If you didn't click the button and you wanted to click it, then you are too late! Now you're gonna see it!
Finally, we reached the douche with the silver armlet. This is the moment we've been waiting for. And now, it's time to... Wait, that's it? That was fast. I didn't even have to heal once. That's a little disappointing, actually. But guess what? That wasn't really the boss! The final boss is actually Agito. You know, the original wearer of the silver armlet. Hopefully he's a little more challenging. Fuck yeah! This is some HR Giger shit. True awesomeness in its purest form. If you're not impressed by now, you gotta be from another fucking dimension. Again though, the challenge isn't exactly what I would call, well, hard. I mean, it would definitely be a challenge without using a single healing item, but I managed to get through pretty easily. Even if the fight isn't very difficult, or long for that matter, it took me about 3 minutes. Then again, it's probably the longest fight in the whole game. But that doesn't mean that it's boring. Far from it, actually. The music here is pretty damn good. Also, the fight itself is some of the most fun I've had in the game. To cause damage to Agito, you need to attack the head. But to be able to do that in the first place, you need to kill off these tentacle worm things on the sides. Repeat this a few times while also battling the exploding minions, and finally he starts breathing fire. You need to dodge the flames, but at this stage you can strike the head as much as you want, so the fight ends pretty quickly. I wish there was a little more to it, but it's still a really fun fight. And the surprise of seeing Agito for the first time and discovering he's a huge fucking monster was awesome in itself. After killing Agito, you discover that the current wearer of the silver armlets is a woman, and then it's revealed that the woman is actually your sister. Well, I mean, Ali's sister, of course. I thought that was a pretty cool twist. The spirits show up one last time and speaks a few touching words, before Gwen, your sister, tells you that she was possessed and acting beyond her own control, and that she feels a great deal of guilt over killing countless of innocent people. So she decides to send Ali back to the palace alone. And that's exactly what happens. The armlets are hidden away forever, and the kingdom is safe again. I was really intrigued by the story throughout the whole game. It's not mind-blowing or groundbreaking in any way, but it's definitely interesting and captivating enough to keep you somewhat interested in the characters and the plots. The story of Thor—
Wait, hold on a second. I need to ask a very obvious question. Why the hell is this game called The Story of Thor? I mean, none of the characters are called Thor, and as a matter of fact, the name Thor isn't even mentioned once throughout the whole game. I'm not counting the title screen, of course.
And Thor, being the Norse god of thunder, doesn't add up in any way whatsoever. This is set in what I would believe is the Middle East. Considering the name of the city is called Oasis, the main character's name is Ali, and the clothing fashion is very Middle Eastern indeed. At least this has to be some sort of fantasy version of that. So what is going on with the title? Well, I tried to do some research on it, but I got nothing. Am I the only one puzzled by this? Anyways, here's my theory. I guess Ancient or Sega wanted the game to appeal to the European market and felt that the word Oasis would seem foreign or uninteresting to the pale people of the North. So they decided to change the title to something we could relate to, which ended up being The Story of Thor. At least that was my initial theory, until I realized that the Japanese release is also called The Story of Thor, although with a slightly different Japanese subtitle. The only release named properly was the US version called Beyond Oasis. Didn't they consider that the players would question the title after playing the game? Why not at least change some of the characters' names in the game to make the story and title go together? Unless any of you watching this video have any information on this subject, I guess it'll remain a mystery. Considering this, I have to say that Beyond Oasis has a better ring to it, and it certainly makes a great fucking deal more sense. Alright, enough with the speculations already. A second game was released on the Sega Saturn years later, appropriately named The Story of Thor 2, or Legend of Oasis in the US. This was actually a prequel to the first game and features a very similar art style, although I kinda like the look of the Mega Drive version better. I haven't tried this one out for myself, as I don't own a copy yet, but from what little I've seen, it looks like it's pretty faithful to its younger brother.
You know, I waited a long time to play this game, and that's because it's a little bit on the pricey side. And I wanted to have the game in my collection before playing it. Then after I bought a copy and finished it, I realized that I had the game all along. It's actually part of the Sega Ultimate Collection on the PS3 and 360. So, yeah. If you want to play the game but don't want to spend like a lot of money on it, then I would really recommend getting this one, as it's got HD graphics and, well, there's tons of other games on there. It's also available on the Wii's Virtual Console, so that's another option. Or if you're like me and want to get the original physical release of the game, then here is a chart over how much the game goes for online. Well, right now anyways. I also want to add that if you're getting the original physical release complete in box status, then you also get the very awesome instruction manual. Now this is awesome for several reasons, and the main reason for me at least being the artwork that it's illustrated throughout the pages. There's also a lot of useful information in there, which really isn't that common nowadays. Come to think of it, PS4 games, like right here, doesn't even have a manual. Well, they have these fucking flaps, and it sucks. What the hell is this world coming to? Where you can't have fucking manuals in the games anymore?
I think it's obvious that the idea of physical released video games are slowly dying, but we can always look back at the golden age of gaming where every purchase was a gamble, and we didn't even know what was in store before we turned on the console and the game booted up. Sure, it could be something great, but let's face it, we were often left with a disappointing experience and went back to playing the few awesome games we already owned. I'm sure if I'd grown up with the Story of Thor on my Mega Drive, it would have been one of those times where the controller was glued to my hands for hours. I hear people say it's too easy, but if that's the case, then I must really suck at gaming, cause I honestly had to look up a couple things that just left me walking around like a huge question mark. It's not hard, but I wouldn't call it too easy by any means either. It's an all-around great game that I believe every retro gamer with even a slight interest in adventure games should have in their collection, or at least play through at some point. To me, it was very unexpected, cause I had no idea this game even existed until I discovered it a couple years back, but I had an awesome time with this gem. The Story of Thor has quickly become one of my favorite games on the Sega, and I'm sure I'll be revisiting the great Kingdom of Oasis in the near future.